Welcome to our latest edition of CharitEpulse, our bi-weekly charity podcast. My name is Charles Mosquita, Charities Director at Quilter Cheviot Investment Management. I'm delighted to be joined by my regular musketeers, Catherine Ross-Jomji, leading charity legal beagle at Shakespeare Martineau, and James Saunders, charity partner at leading accountancy and audit firm Moore Kingston Smith. Together, we explore the latest pressing issues facing the not-for-profit and voluntary organisations. Don't forget, you can catch us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or on our various websites. We would love to have feedback, so please send us comments and questions. Well, we have had, first of all, the government has published a 1 million roadmap to boost place-based philanthropy, making it easier for the wealthiest to give back to local communities. Are either of you going to volunteer to be a place-based philanthropic ambassador? James, I think I'll throw that one at you first.
Yeah, there's a lot of long words in these reports and these articles. I think the intention, obviously, by government to address some of the issues that have been found in the last couple of years around particularly deprived areas is positive, but there is a big question about. Philanthropy is not the problem at the moment. People wanting to spend and give money into the charity sector, in my experience at the moment, is not a problem. There's loads of money in the grand scheme of things, comparatively, trying to make its way into the charity sector, in comparison to central government funding, which is reducing so much, local council funding and backing, which is just dropping like a stone. So when I say loads, I mean in comparison to other sources. I'm not sure that place-based is what philanthropists necessarily want to do. I'm not sure that philanthropists want any restriction on what they can do. It seems to me philanthropists want to do exactly what they want to do, and that could be, putting any sort of guidance or even restrictions on that is not a great idea. But I would also wait to see how it pans out, and if it drives an enormous amount of local charitable giving, then I will stand corrected.
Catherine?
It's interesting, isn't it? I saw it and my initial thought was £1 million. It's £1 million. It's a lot of money. And I know it's a 3-year project, so okay, 1 million divided by 3, but still, is that the best use of £1 million? I was slightly dubious when I first read it. And my take, although the roadmap does talk about 3 pillars, of which place-based philanthropy is only one of the 3, I would just dispute whether that is the interest for potential philanthropists. I think it's assumed that they want to give local and stay local. And my experience of advising philanthropists is that they often don't want to be restricted by geography, and they want to donate based on causes that they want to support, and they don't want to be limited to a geographical area where they currently live or used to live. So I think if you are limiting the potential pool of philanthropic investment and donations, then that's not addressing what this roadmap is seeking to do. So I just thought, yes, there's a quote from the chief executive of UK community foundations, but I think sometimes that is where community foundations reach the limit of their usefulness to some donors, because they just see it as, oh, well, I don't want to only direct my giving to a geographical area. I want to have more freedom to be able to give according to cause and regardless of geography. So I suppose it's an opportunity, isn't it, for people to feed into this? But I suppose it depends who you ask, and it depends what you ask them. But it will be interesting, I think, what they come out with.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm a bit confused about what DCMS is really trying to achieve from a charitable. It doesn't seem to have a clear strategy, and this just seems to be sort of picking up something that is a very small or niche end of the whole sector. So I have to say I read it and just felt this was an awful lot of platitudes. The bit that did really alarm me was around there has been some conversation about the FCA requiring wealth advisors to undertake training around advice on philanthropic giving. And I think there has been a massive missed opportunity. I don't think financial advisors should be advising on philanthropy, but what I do think they should be able to advise on is around, those people who want to give to charities. How should they do it? Which would include donor advice funds and including community foundations, and making sure that they do it in the most tax efficient way, both from an inheritance tax, income tax, and everything else. And I just don't think that is particularly well known. And so why they can't add that to the, educational program, I really don't understand.
And Charles, to Catherine's point about, what's the purpose, if you like, the quote from the Civil Society Minister: by better connecting generous individuals with local organisations, we can unlock a new wave of giving. I mean, it makes it sound like a middleman. It makes it sound like an agent, if you like. And I do not see that is a problem that needs to be solved personally.
But the educational bit does, and the problem is the comment that was in the article said DCMS had concluded bringing advice on philanthropy into the scope of FCA regulation would increase the cost and administration burden for providers, and therefore decided against it. But instead, they're going to have in partnership with the Office of Impact Economy, and you're already getting worried, aren't you? They'll establish a joint working group. Do I need to say any more? Anyway, I hope I'm proven wrong, but I just think that's a real missed opportunity. Now we've got one of our favourites. We've discussed this at least 3 or 4 times. So the regulator has engaged with Centre as it files defamation case against Prince Harry. So Centre has begun legal proceedings against its co-founder Prince Harry and the former and I think founding trustee Mark Dyer. And they've been alleged that they've been behind a coordinated adverse media campaign targeting the charity. Catherine, you might want to give a bit of background to this one as well.
Yeah, just a bit of the legal context. I mean, I saw the headline. I thought, I cannot believe this charity is at it again. Because when I first saw it, it was about the charity bringing legal proceedings. So my immediate response to that was saying, hang on a minute, because under the Charities Act, charity proceedings is a defined term and it requires prior authorization from the Charity Commission before you can bring those proceedings. When I looked into it further, defamation isn't charity proceedings. So in that respect, a charity can bring proceedings for defamation in principle without going to the Charity Commission first. But the Charity Commission's guidance on litigation by charities is still very, very clear about throughout the trustees need to be acting in their charity's best interests. It's the use of charitable funds. How is such litigation advancing a charity's purposes? Blah, blah, blah. In the round, how on earth is bringing a defamation claim against Prince Harry and the other founding trustee in any way, shape, or form in the best interests of this charity? And I just think the more the trustees seem to do on this charity leads me to think I'm becoming one of these knee-jerk people that says you should take their charitable status away from them, because I just don't think they're running this as a charity. I think it's absolutely inappropriate behaviour by the trustees. But James, I know you had more of a nuanced point about the defamation piece in general.
Yeah, I see it with absolutely no legal expertise whatsoever. I don't understand how a charity can, or the charity in this case, is the one being defamed. I mean, if there is defamation, then presumably it's at an individual basis, understandably with egos involved and stuff like that on both sides. But that no one's defamed the charity as an entity. And this is the whole point about having a separate legal entity, if you like, is there's been no one said Centre itself is in any way the problem. It's all to do with individuals, and participants in, rather than the charity itself. So I still don't. I'm not surprised the Charity Commission is getting involved, because surely the first argument is this isn't a charity matter; it's a personal matter. So take it out on each other if you want, but you do it with your own money and in your own time.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no doubt about this. They're killing this charity, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't need to take the status away. I mean, the Charity Commission opened a compliance case, wasn't it, last year, and they concluded. Part of the conclusions was the regulator heavily criticised all parties of this dispute for allowing it to play out in public. So what's happening again? We're playing this out in public. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just extraordinary. And just to be clear, that the charity supposedly isn't paying for this case. It's externally funding. It's being externally funded and not by charitable funds. But even so, why would you do this? I mean, who's going to give you any money whatsoever if you're in a massive legal dispute, and particularly one that's as high profile as this? I just find it extraordinary.
Yeah. Because I think the legal financing, yes, that's one point, but why would anyone want to be associated with this charity? Why would you want to be seen to be supporting the charity in the way that it's currently conducting itself? I think that's where internally the trustees seem to me to be causing more defamation against the good character of the charity than Prince Harry has done.
I mean, you're right, Catherine. Any money going into this charity is going to be scrutinised to the hilt now, isn't it? They're going to be looking at who is funding this, where's this money coming from. That's going to be an enormous media interest straight away, and then subsequently, what's the money being spent on? It's a horrible attention case.
I also don't think it was very helpful that Prince Harry's spokesman criticised the regulator's report in October, because I mean, when we discussed it back then, and having read it, it was a very balanced, and I think I think they were absolutely right on the information that that was in the public domain in the conclusions that the commission came to. So anyway, well, no doubt that it will raise its ugly head again before we're too much older. Anyway, so the next one is NCVO is facing mounting allegations of entrenched bullying, chaotic decision-making by leaders, and an internal culture that former employees have described as performative, nepotistic, and completely dysfunctional. I love the language. James.
Yeah, it's quite upsetting, really, all round this story. And unfortunately, the NCV have had a number of problems recently, which I think it's fair to say, on the one hand, haven't been handled particularly well. And indeed, a lot of their responses to some of those issues that have arisen have prompted more problems and issues. This one in particular now this week is to do with the culture, driven by leadership. And, in a lot of ways, let's go back to what we were talking about in our previous, one of our previous issues with Sharon Davis. It's to do with that problem of culture and problem of leadership, isn't it? What's the quote? Toxic, chaotic, and ego-driven culture inside NCVO. So I think it's really upsetting that an organisation that it should always have and has always purported to have the best interests of the charity sector at heart is now being hauled over the coals like this, and is having a good examination of exactly how it runs. Yeah, a bit sad, really. Obviously, you need them to get to the bottom of it.
Catherine?
It is a sad tale, isn't it? I mean, I think as it was being played out in the press as well, you just wanted to say, stop digging. I think, various comments were being made by different people. I'm not sure any of it was particularly helpful. And it did, I thought, because it stemmed originally from the points about, quotes, small charities, didn't it? And what support NCVO was giving to small charities. And then NCVO itself choosing to describe itself as a small charity whilst not meeting their own definition of what a small charity is. And it just was going round and round in circles, thinking this is just not a great reflection on an umbrella organisation that represents thousands upon thousands of charities in the sector that needs to be advocating on their behalf, providing them with guidance and support. But how on earth can they do that when they seem to be fighting different fronts at this point, and internally it seems very chaotic? But I suppose you're only ever seeing it from these sorts of stories and reports, aren't we? We don't know the reality of it behind the scenes, but it's not a great look. And anything that damages confidence and trust in the sector, I think, damages all charities. I think that's where people just start to query, well, how well run is this charity and should I be donating to it? Because, you hear these things in the press, and that's where I think nobody wins with these sorts of stories.
Yeah, I mean NCVO last year appointed a new chief executive whose name is Kate Lee, OBE, no less. You've got a number of ex-employees, aren't you? And why are they making the comments now? Which is thing. And there was also in the article, and again, I don't know how accurate it is, but it talks about 40% staff turnover in 2024. But then when looking at the report and accounts, the redundancies was 55,000. So I'm wondering whether that sort of slightly stacks up. And then there was a concern raised about the payments were under an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. Well, that would be standard practice. So why make a special point about that?
Yeah,
I think it's
I mean,
very.
that bit made me laugh out loud, Charles, about the reporter saying we did ask the charity whether they'd made any NDAs and they didn't confirm or deny. And I'm like, that's the whole point of an NDA. You cannot confirm or deny because by doing so, you are admitting to its existence. Yes.
But playing these things out in public, you do wonder sometimes of whether this is just a grievance or whether this is actually there's more substance to it.
Yeah.
And I just, because it's very difficult for an organisation to respond, particularly with former employees that are not are remaining anonymous. Well, we have another one, Catherine. With the Charity Commission has closed a compliance case it opened last year after the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy removed its chair and deputy chair from its board. Concerns were raised, were included poor governance, safeguarding, reputational risk, and financial controls.
Oh, and this is another sad tale, isn't it? I think the various allegations in here, and ultimately was around the removal of the chair and the deputy chair from the board. But then the charity did acknowledge governance failures, including an allegation that remuneration and expenses claimed by one of those people had exceeded what was permitted. So I'm very much, well, that's an own goal. You have your own procedures, monitor them, run it properly, get on top of this. But then also one of I think the chair who was removed then talked about she was preparing litigation in response because she'd suffered harm and detriment. But often with charity trustee roles, you just want somebody to take them aside and say, this is a voluntary position and they don't want you. You have to accept that. Whether the process was fair or not, in many ways is irrelevant. The relationship of trust amongst the trustees has broken down. There is no happy ending to these sorts of tales. But clearly there were some governance criticisms, and I think the charity seems to have taken that on the chin in terms of renewing their articles of association, which I'd be very happy to help with should they need that. But I just think they need to be better and more thorough because you're just opening yourselves up to say there's a weakness here, and that's not a good look when this plays out.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that worries me in these cases when we see them is the automatic reach for. I've been in this case, I've been removed because the process isn't robust, and it was, it's so easy to say that the process wasn't perfect on all of these sort of things. I mean, I think most of us have seen this in either our clients or certainly, Catherine, you and I have in our clients, and also personally where I've been a trustee in the past as well. It's the accusation that something isn't perfect, therefore it was illegal or highly flawed, and I was a victim of it, is a very easy one to reach for and make as an initial claim. The tribunal process or whatever it is in employment terms, or in this case trustee. On the other side, for a charity in particular, and particularly anything other than the very largest charities, it is very difficult to have all of these processes as perfect as you can. There will always be holes in these things. It's very difficult to afford the very best legal advice, Catherine notwithstanding, that will always keep you absolutely on the ball with these legal processes. I just and it's so easy these days to start reaching for something's not perfect, therefore I'm going to start proceedings, and that is the big worry for an awful lot of charities, businesses as well. Don't get me wrong, it's not charity specific, but it is a huge problem. And with employment law changes coming through this next 18 months, wow, it's a minefield.
It is worrying again, isn't it, about sort of going just the willingness to go public rather than
A
thinking
post on
about,
LinkedIn, yeah, posted on LinkedIn.
yeah.
I think the quote is, "I've been removed by the Board of Governors following a process I believe to have been procedurally flawed, legally contestable, and unduly influenced by internal dynamics and personal interest." Now, that none of that is a slam dunk case, and all of it is, frankly, wild and unsubstantiated accusations at that stage. Probably not defamation. Let's go back to that point. But you stick it on LinkedIn, you've got your defence, haven't you? And you've got something to work with.
But and it went on, didn't it? Say preparing litigation in response to
Yeah.
harm and sustained detriment. I mean, just people join a board because they want to make a difference, and you just think if you're one of, I don't know how many trustees are on this board, but let's say there are 8, and you're out of kilter, then you're a volunteer, as Catherine said. Just step down, move on. You don't want really the organisation to be damaged.
As we know from previous weeks, there's plenty of other charities that do want your help with all the vacancies around. So go and find something you do want to do.
Yeah, agreed. Anyway, let's finish on a really, really positive note. So in The Economist, it's not a publication you normally expect to see articles around charities. It had a lengthy article a couple of weeks ago on the Duke of Edinburgh Awards, is the most popular than it has been ever. So I think they've seen record participation. So 570,000 young people in Britain last year. 94,000 came from ethnic minorities. The D of E has spread to 130 countries. And interestingly, Prince Philip set it up amid concerns about post-war generation made soft by cinemas and welfare state. Now, I wonder whether that's changed. Anyway, this is against a backdrop of more than 70% since of funding to youth clubs having declined since 2010, and I think over 1,000 youth clubs having closed in the same period. So, Catherine, what's your view on Duke of Edinburgh?
I know, and our dear listener won't be able to tell that I do have more kind of weather coping hair now. But as a general rule, no, I don't want to be outside in the wind, the rain, wild conditions. It's not for me. I did think that was quite funny about the comment about cinema, because I felt like we were heading into Timothy Chalamet territory where we say nobody's interested in the opera and ballet anymore, whereas I think this would be nobody should be going to the cinema either. But it is fantastic. I mean, it's a fantastic achievement. The fact that a charity can stand, changes to the extent that we've had and still have so many young people wanting to do all of this work and experience from it and the benefits they get. And I thought it was great coverage to see, and a bit of an antidote, isn't it, to some of the more negative stories we often see. I thought, finally, let's have something that's more of a good news and genuinely giving credit where credit is due.
James?
Yeah, I was a scout. I didn't do Duke of Edinburgh, but similar ideas. I think it's brilliant, and it goes against a lot of the the feedback at the moment from or on the youth sector, if you like, is that they're all into social media, and there's been quite a lot of reporting. I've heard it through the radio and through the BBC recently about IQ levels decreasing for the first time in a century, and literacy rates decreasing rapidly as people don't read books anymore. That's adults as well as kids. So to hear that some of the more traditional and outdoorsy, Catherine, sorry, pastimes and activities and efforts are on the increase and going well is refreshing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's absolutely fantastic, and full marks to D of E for moving with the times as well and remaining relevant. I'd say I didn't do D of E, but I was in the combined cadet force, and I did do 10 tours twice, which was I think 35 miles and 55 miles overnight on Dartmoor, which was enormous fun. And I have to say that all of that stuff was fantastic for preparing me for future life. So I'm a big fan, and yeah, as you say, I think it's a really great story to finish on. Anyway, thank you, Jay. Well, actually, what we should say is anybody else has got a fantastic story like that, they should write into us and let us know, and we can then equally share. Anyway, thank you, James. Thank you, Catherine. Say we live in interesting times would be, again, an understatement. Thank you for listening. We would love to hear from you, even good positive stories like the Duke of Edinburgh. And if you have any questions or want us to cover any topics, do please get in touch. Do share with family and friends. And according to all my friends, this is the only charity podcast worth listening to.